You fight because you feel there is no choice. I fight to rage against the darkness. We are not the same. Private Samuel Lurksit, Solarian Iron, Dominion, Armed Forces, Active Army, Margite Siege of Signosarian, Colorized Vice-Tyrant, Admiral Krakenwolf, had one of his forehands against the armorglass of the show bridge, staring into the inky blackness strewn with pinpricks of stars. There were flashes here and there, as the massive Margite constructs hidden by distance. Even then, if he squinted, he could see some of them, their massive size negating distance's ability to hide them. A bright white flash with an electric blue core suddenly devoured one of the Margite constructs close enough and large enough to be the size of the last part of his thumb. When the flash cleared, there was the strange feeling of his vision being pulled at, like foam being pulled down a bathtub drain. Then it cleared up. He moved over and looked at the holotank. There was discussions between the two massive automated super heavy combat ships. Vice-Tyrant Admiral Krakenwolf shook his head. They were bigger than super dreadnoughts, bigger than monitors, bigger than anything he had ever thought possible outside of the precursor autonomous war machines. He had seen one once, its cores dead, drifting endlessly. It was old tech, not worth risking violence with any of the autonomous robots still inside the continent-sized hulk. It had been nearly 8,000 miles long, 1,500 miles thick, 6,000 miles wide. The massive Odin was nearly 800 miles long and 15 miles wide. The barrels of the guns extended from the open jaws of the screaming skull were measured in the tens of meters. The whole thing bristled with guns. Having seen the Margite try the spear trick, Vice-Tyrant Admiral Krakenwolf also had learned that Odin's battle screens were dark purple and black, with heavy runic script. 20 spears had hit the massive warship in one massive convulsive attack. Not one had even managed to get the powerful battle screens to even flicker. In the holotank, there was a flicker. Communications request from Odin. Sir, he heard, put it through. Vice-Tyrant Admiral Krakenwolf ordered. The tank rippled, and what stood there would have made Krakenwolf take a step back, or perhaps even become physically ill not very long ago. Again, the cutesy-looking anime girl, dressed in a white uniform with a blue jacket secured by a white belt. Her face was bloodless and slightly blue, with skin torn away to reveal the teeth of her jaw, the socket of her eye, and her skull on one side. Her uniform was damaged on that side, scorched and torn. She held a crop in one hand and stared with burning red eyes. Your ground forces need reinforcements, the girl said, her voice bubbling and choking. He could hear the whistle of a punctured lung. They are calling for reinforcements and considering calling up the last of the reserves. Yes, Krakenwolf said, I can deploy troops. Odin said, I have 3 armies ready to go. Mission configurable drop pods as well as dropship and striker support. 3 armies. Why not just 1 army? Krakenwolf asked. Ground forces, Admiral. Pardon mistranslation. Updating. The girl said. She ducked her chin for a second, then looked back up. 3 field armies, each with 5 corps, 1 for each planet. Musashi has deployed troops, as have the Neko Marines and the Empire, Krakenwolf said. He held up his hand to show he wasn't done. But planets are large, and the Margite have landed billions of troops. He heaved a deep breath. I accept your generous offer, Krakenwolf said. Odin merely stared at him for a long moment. Finally, she used the tip of her crop to push the brim of her hat up slightly. Be warned, Vice-Tyrant. I do not bring catgirls whimsical in their violence. I do not bring the short-baked clones of Musashi. I do not bring the troops of the Empire. I do not bring what you have seen with the others. I am older than Musashi. She leaned forward. What I bring is terrible to behold. Save my people, Odin, and I will worry about the price I must pay afterwards, Krakenwolf said. He faintly heard behind him the officer on sensors report that another large group of Margite constructs had just warped into the system. Save as many as you can, he pleaded. The living dead anime girl nodded. She closed her eyes for a second, her command lancing out into the massive battleship's computer system. Deep inside the labyrinth that made up her internal spaces, objectives, maps, weapon training, armor training, vehicle training, was all hot-loaded into the brains of the Marines inside the ship. The Marines went to warming up as they were slotted into the drop pods, the dropships, into whatever else was needed. Krakenwolf watched as Odin suddenly began firing pods. May those who come after me understand what dark purpose led me to making the decisions I make here. Krakenwolf thought. Buildings had collapsed during the long hellish night, and with rising sun, it was almost as if the weight of the breaking dawn was too much for other buildings, and they began collapsing. Volunteer, as Kickermo had counted at least 4 atomics going off. The high-tech advanced polymers and alloys of modern construction, resisting the weapons to some extent. It was no longer around, repelling the Margite and keeping them from damaging anything. It was about saving the people in the shelters. Not that Volunteer, as Kikmoo was thinking about any of that. The log base at 12th and Broadsword had turned out to be a no-go. Before Ozzy's little squad could reach it, they got overrun by the Margite. Ozzy had been one of the volunteer conscripts that had moved through the cleared parking lot and shot the Margite point blank in the center of their central mass. True, It overpenetrated and hit the concrete underneath, sending shards slashing at both the Margite and the victim. But he'd seen it didn't matter. "But, Sergeant, what if they're alive?" Dizzy asked. Staff Sergeant Breaker stared at Dizzy for a long moment before shifting his rifle to his left hand. He reached down with his right hand, grabbed the end of the arm right below the closed calcite orb that protected the eye, and yanked. With a biological sticky sound, it ripped up. Embedded in the Margite was a puntimate, or rather, what was left of her. The fur at the edges where her flesh met the Margite's was stripped away. As was the flesh, Ozzy could see veins and tendrils of tissue. The cilia on the underside held her tight, had bored into her flesh. Her uniform fell off of her, the back of it having been dissolved by the Margite's digestive fluids. Her stomach bulged and the thick tongue beak inside the Margite's mouth pushed its way out, the teeth unfolding. Her eyes were open, her mouth worked soundlessly. Breaker threw the Margite down on its back. Several of the squad made gagging noises and started to turn away. "Look at her," he shouted. He pointed his rifle at her. "Look at her. She's still alive. She feels every bit of it." He pulled the trigger. The puntimate's head exploded. He pulled the trigger twice more, blowing apart the Margite's brain case. "You do them no favors thinking you can save them," he snapped. He pointed at the carpet of them covering the parking lot. "Get to work. Every second you stand here jacking off is another eternity for those poor bastards being dissolved." Now, as he moved through the dusty morning, catching up to Dizzy, who was standing by the wall that had been slowly built by the automated systems once they were turned back on. "You all right?" Azzy asked. Dizzy shook his head. "No." "Good day though," Azzy said. His detector beeped and he looked down. Heavy rads. Digging into his top pocket, he got out his pack of self-lights. He lit up a red and deeply. "How is it a good day?" Dizzy asked. "We lost half our squad. The only reason this logistics base is operational is because the Neko Marines helped protect it." Ozzy exhaled out the reddish-tinted smoke, which signified his rads were still high. "I'm still alive." Dizzy looked at him. "But, it's more than us. It's everything." As he shook his head. "Don't overthink it. Right here, right now, there's only us." That last firefight, where Breaker was yelling he'd transmit to final, you know what that meant. Dizzy shook his head, digging out his own pack of reds. "No, it means that we are going to be overrun and killed to a man, and he was going to live Mike it the whole way so that military intelligence and command could figure out where things went wrong and prevent it from happening again." As he tapped the long thin ashes off and watched them whisk away in the dusty air. "We were losing before the Neko Marines showed up." Dizzy closed his eyes and lowered his head. "What hope do we have?" Ozzy took a deep breath and exhaled, smiling. "For each breath, there has to be more," Dizzy protested. Ozzy shook his head. "There isn't, not for us. There's only each breath." He paused, exhaling pinkish-looking smoke. The meds in the red doing their work. He looked around. "There's only the next breath, until there isn't." Dizzy hung his head. "I didn't think it would be like this when I volunteered. My family is in the shelters, just like yours," as he said. He looked around. "We have to stop the Margite, have to give the shelters the time they need to expand, to fill up." There was a low rumble, and the ground shook. "I pray those poor bastards who live in that Skyraker were already in their shelter," Ozzy said. Dizzy lowered his head again. Yi appeared out of the dust. She had her rocket launcher over one shoulder and a soft, purse-like bag hanging from a strap. "Sergeant Breaker said we're getting support," she said. She moved up and sat down on an empty plastic crate. She reached into the bag, pulled and held out a wire headset. "He wants us to put these in our helmets." "What is it?" Ozzy asked, pulling off his helmet with his upper hands and taking the wire mesh with one of his lower hands. Sergeant Breaker and Clicker both said it's some kind of phasic shielding. "Guess it's because of that weird thing I killed." She shrugged. Ozzy was pretty satisfied with how easy it was to put the wire mesh into his helmet and hook it into the battery. He slapped his helmet on and could faintly taste berries. His retinal link, which now had 5 hair-thin lines, 3 up and down, 2 across, in it, showed that it was only at 20%. "Wow," as he blinked. "That's ER... Lanakdalan are more susceptible to psychic attacks." He shrugged. "I'm Puntamat. Something about my thoughts being too silly or slippery or something," as he snickered. "Shut up," she laughed, shoving him. There was the atonal shrieking sound of Gravstrikers behind them. "Man, that gives me the heebie-jeebies," Dizzy said. "Just Gravstrikers," as he said. "Gonna need close air support sooner or later." He dropped the butt of the red down and stepped on it, one of his grav hoof shoes throwing a purplish-blue spark. "Got fun for a bit, didn't it, Ozzy?" Yi said, pulling her rocket launcher down into her lap. "That's one word for it," as he chuckled. "Well, it was definitely exciting," Yi laughed. "You should report to mental hygiene," Dizzy said softly. "What was I thinking? Volunteering." As he sighed. "I was thinking that someone has to protect my family. If I'm not willing to do it, how can I ask someone else to potentially die for them?" Yi nodded. Double V came jogging up, bandoliers of 40mm grenades hanging from his body armor. He had 2 heavy packs thrown over his lower flanks. "Did you guys hear?" he asked. Hear what? Ozzy asked. We're getting reinforcements, Double V said. He opened his mouth right as the reporter and the cameraman came looming out of the dust. Double V's mouth slammed shut and Ozzy almost bit his tongue, closing his mouth. I'm going live in a few minutes, the reporter said. I know you're about to go out on patrol, she said. How do you know? Double V said. She just smiled. She uses the directional mic on the camera to eavesdrop, he said, her face contorting in disgust. The Hestlin male, V. Diggy, wandered up right at that moment. One finger stuck up his nose. I'd like to interview you. Maybe your family will see it, the Hammeroosen reporter said, as he could see the red light showing the camera was live. How about me? Diggy asked, slapping one hand against the medic bag hanging by his side. The cameraman turned just in time for Diggy to pull his finger out of his nose and shake his hand sharply. He hawked, then spit on the ground. Dust, the Hestlin said. He spit again. Hey Mom, hey Dad, I'm still alive so far. He looked up. It's bad up here. I hope you went to the shelter like you were told. He looked back at the camera. Little brother, be glad I locked you in the closet so you couldn't come. He looked back up. You'd have never made it. He turned around and walked back into the dust. The camera swung around just as Breaker came out of the dust. We'll be moving out. Get to the gate. I'm coming, the reporter said. Breaker looked over his shoulder as he walked away. I won't task any of my men to dedicate any effort toward your protection. Ozzy hustled after Breaker, following until they reached the big truck. Again, his hoof shoes scraped and scrabbled as he climbed in the back. The rest of the squad climbed in. Breaker leaning against the cab, pulling on a pair of goggles. SCS Retinal Link alerted him in blinking numbers that his onboard phasic protection just jumped to 42%. Got room, came a rumbling voice. Ozzy looked over to see for humans that didn't look well, right. Sure, Breaker said. He looked around. Everyone check your phasic protection boosters. The 4 humans climbed up at the back. Imperio Breaker asked. Negative. Dominion, one said. Breaker frowned. How did you get here so fast? Heard there was a fight, one said. He shrugged. Kaga dropped us off. Oh, Breaker said. Ozzy leaned over, noticing that Breaker seemed a bit thrown off. What's the big deal? They're humans, like you. Breaker shook his head. Kind of, was all he said. As the truck pulled out, the electric motors making a whining sound, as he heard one of the new humans. We're Solarian kid.